this episode you join me on Gold Lake here at Gold Valley, and what I'm going to really look in depth at today is fishing short matches, evening matches. It's the time of year for it. As you can see, the weather's warming up, absolutely fantastic. The fish are moving around, there's a slight breeze on the lake, and obviously fishing short 3 and 4 hour evening matches is a lot different to fishing a 5-hour day match. You're looking at catching a big weight and you're looking at catching it quick, and normally big fish. And what I want to do today is just show you a few little tips and little techniques that have really helped me in the past to really do well in these short sprint matches. Here at Gold Valley the fish are big, like most commercials, exactly the same. And what I'm going to show you today is how to catch big fish quick. And like I say, just try and stack things in your favour. For those of you that have seen the latest one that we did on the F1s, I talk a lot about in matches to try and stack things in your favour, make it easy for you. It's not being lazy, but you're trying to make things easy for you. And a couple of the little things that I want to show you today will definitely stand you in good stead in short matches. I've got quite a lot of experience fishing in short matches, not just in England but abroad. A lot of the early World Championships and European Championships I fished were 3 hours, and you had to be aggressive, especially on venues where there are lots of fish. And fishing here in England is no different. I fish a lot of 3 and 4 hour evening matches in the summer, and it is about catching big weights of big fish and catching them quick. The first little method that I want to show you today is a little bit old school, but it is so productive and it's so quick as far as catching big weights of fish are concerned, and that's fishing with a pole float on a rod. In the past here, on a lot of commercials at Whiteacres and various places like that, fishing a bolognese rod or a 15-foot rod with a pole float on has been very productive. But in the past, poles and elastics were nowhere near as strong as they are now, and they are very strong. But I've always been a firm believer that you can never pull as hard on a pole as you can a rod. And a lot of these big fish that come into that near margin, just over that shelf, you can target them on a rod. Today's setup, you can see what I've got is a 14-foot Darwin Tournament Professional. It's my number one choice for all my waggler fishing, my stick float fishing, either fishing on the Wye or fishing a slider abroad. It's my number one choice, normally in 13 foot. But what the 14-foot option gives me when I'm fishing like today, just gives me that extra foot to get out over the shelf. We're on peg 54 today, and the depth is quite close, and it's an ideal peg for me to come and show you how productive and how quick you can build a weight on this kind of method. As you can see, I've just got my normal reel, the TDX 3000, my number one choice. It's not one of those methods where you need a special rod, a special reel, or anything out of the ordinary. You can use your conventional rod and reel setup, as long as your rod, like I say, 13-14 foot, and it's quite strong. The main line is 8-pound Daba ST. Again, I'll explain more, but that does sound quite heavy for this style of fishing, especially float fishing, but it's strength and durability. Remember, we're fishing a short sprint match and we're looking to put a big weight in the net very, very fast. Going up to the business end, again, as you know, a lot of my fishing is built around strength and durability. I've got a Carper paste float on. Although we're not fishing paste today, it is my number one choice when we're catching big weights of fish on this style of method. The main reason is the line goes through the body. You can see the body's moving on the line there, and what this gives me is a lot of strength. When I'm pulling really hard on a rod, I've got a double figure fish or maybe even bigger on, and I'm pulling hard, the line can't cut into the body of the float and affect the float for the next bite or the next time that I'm actually fishing. So the line passes through the actual body of the float. This makes it so strong, durable. In a lot of evening matches especially, you might not catch the well till the last hour, and then there's chance of catching 100 pound in an hour. And that sounds a lot, but trust me, it's more than possible. And you need the right floats, you need the right setup, so that not necessarily your float or your gear is strong enough to catch one big fish, but it's strong enough to catch 10 big fish, one after another, and your gear's not going to let you down. As far as the actual rig is concerned, you can see that it's just made up exactly the same as I would do a pole rig. I've just got a loop to loop there from main line to pole rig. It's 022 main line, and I'm actually fishing this direct again because we're fishing for big fish. As far as plumbing up's concerned, it's dead depth, body and the bristle out as normal, like we would do for bream, for carp, for F1s. Just because we're fishing a pole float on a rod, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to alter your setup at all, or the way that you tie your rig. The hook is a size 12 Gamma Carp. Like you all know, again, my #1 choice. I've won numerous amounts of matches with this, from little open matches right the way up to the Fishermania Internationals. This was my #1 hook for catching big fish quick when you really need to make hay while the sun shines. Now, one little twist that I've got, you can see that the bulk of shot is actually made up of stots. And the reason for this is quite simple. A lot of you know that I'm not a massive fan of stots, but when you're catching big fish and you're using heavy line, stots do go on the line much easier, and they align much better than shot. They don't ping off. The one reason that I don't normally like stots is because they move around. You can see how easy it is for me just to move them around. But when you're only fishing for 10 or 12 big fish, it's very easy, once you've netted the fish, if the stots are apart, to push them back, because it's not an out and out fish race. It's not like trying to catch 100 or 200 F1s, where it really is a bit of a pain to relocate all your shot. So that's the reason that I do like stots now for real heavy line. This really is quite an aggressive way of fishing. We're looking to catch a lot of fish quick. So 8-pound mainline, 0.22 mainline on the rig, which is nicely balanced. The 8-pound ST to 0.22 Super G is very well balanced. Size 12 hook, and again set up dead depth. But all in all, just a very durable setup. One thing that I do want to talk about when we're fishing like this, and it is a method that has come back to the fore as far as match fishing, especially in this area is concerned, when you can target big fish very close, is obviously accuracy of feeding, and that is very important to me. And what you'll see here is that because I've been fishing like this for a little while here in the matches, I've actually got a little bit of tape on my #4 section of my cupping kit. You can see there that there's a small bit of tape, and basically that's where my reel is. So if I hold this and feed exactly the same as I hold my rod, the bait is deposited absolutely smack bang where I'm fishing, where I've plumbed up, and where I'm targeting to catch these fish. Again, just because we're fishing a different method, don't neglect accuracy. As you know, accuracy with far bank markers, accuracy with feeding, for me, is one of the most important things with fishing. And just because we're doing something slightly different, obviously don't lose that. A lot of people would say to you, okay, yeah, well, I can use red hydro, brown hydro, I can use a thick carp top. Why are you using the rod instead of a pole? Personally, I always feel like I can pull a lot harder with the rod. 2, you always tend to get a lot more foul hook fishing. We don't foul hook too many here, maybe 1 or 2 in a 3 or a 4 hour match, but they can be important fish, especially when they're big. And just being able to pull that little bit harder gives you a good chance of getting the fish in. Also, with the rod, at the end of the day, the fish have got a lot of beans. They're going to fight very hard, and sometimes the one time that you do lose them on the pole is on that first initial run. When you hook the fish and they're off, you can't get the sections on quick, and sometimes that can result in either a hook pull or a break. But you'll see today, just using the back wind and the clutch, that it's very difficult to lose the fish. And although it's about catching fish quick, you still want to try and get every single one in that you hook. So that's the setup for the main method that I really want to show you today. The feeding accurate just over the shelf. As far as length of rod's concerned, as long as it's 13 foot, a lot of people on the circuit that I fish, 13 foot is the main sort of length that people use. Personally, I prefer 14. It just gives me that little bit extra length just to get down the shelf, and if the shelf's slightly closer, I can just move to an angle, bearing in mind that you always want a far bank marker. The only other method that I'm setting up today, again, is the edge rig. And this brings me on nicely to the sort of thinking process that I use for these short evening matches. Obviously, it's towards the end of the day and the fish are going to start coming in. And I see a lot of people make big mistakes as far as the methods that they choose. Obviously, method, feeder, bomb, waggler, for me, are more day methods. They're when the fish are out and they're a little bit hard to catch, they're just cruising around. Obviously, as the day goes on, the fish get more confident, they get more hungry where they've been swimming around all day, and they come in. And that is why on a lot of open matches, especially evening matches, that I do tend to target the fish close to me. They're bigger, they're feeding more aggressive, and again, you can just set traps. But even in a 3 or 4 hour match, you might not always get off to a fantastic start. But by targeting the fish close to you with strong, durable tackle, you can really, really ramp up your catch rate when the fish come. Again, I like to fish to win. I'm not here on any matches to try and do okay and win my section, and I know that 99.9% of the matches that I fish, especially the evening matches, are going to be one close. They're going to be one in the edge, or they're going to be one at the bottom of the far shelf. And by using little tricks like using a rod with the same rig that I would do normally on a top 5, but just ramping it up a bit, ramping up the thickness of the line, the size of the hook, and also using a rod being able to pull much harder, coupled with a nice edge line. If the fish really do go well on that top 5, I might not even go in the edge. But you know what it's like, it's always good to have a variation of depth. It's always good for me to have a variation of depth, and most of the time 14-13 foot in front of you will be a lot deeper than your margin line. Today, the two methods that I'm going to show you today is 1, the margin, and 2, fishing a pole float on a rod in front of you and trying to catch a big weight of fish when they come very quickly. Here at Gold Valley, 3-4 hour evening matches are won with in excess of £200 in the past. We used to have a league here, and you did really need close or above £200 in a 3 to 4 hour match, and that just shows you're fishing for a lot of big fish, which sort of underlines why I put so much emphasis on your gear having to be very strong. Obviously then it's baits to suit. We're just coming out of a cold spell. It's absolutely fantastic day. We've got a warm wind blowing left to right, a southwesterly. Obviously ground bait and paste and that hasn't really kicked off yet. We're just coming out of a cold spell where meat and corn has really been productive. And I'm a firm believer that carp recognise baits, and that's why I've gone down the meat and corn route today. Slight little twist. Obviously the meat is the 10mm. Again, I'm not fishing for little fish, I'm fishing for big fish with big hooks and nice big visual target baits like this, mixed in with a few micro pellets and a bit of corn, really can get you the rewards. You can see there I've got 4 or 5 tins of corn in a bait box there. Again, you're looking at using a lot of bait. It's not for the faint-hearted. Obviously, as far as cost wise, it's not a major cost because the sweet corn, the meat and that is relatively cheap. As far as the pellets are concerned, again, just the 2mm pellets. These are the fishery pellets. They can be squeezed into a ball and fed. What I'm going to look to do is feed little balls along with sweet corn and meat on the rod line, which is in front of me, and then in the margins just a few micro pellets with meat and corn just sprinkled in an area. Then when I actually go on the margin line, again, I'm going to tighten it up, try and eliminate any foul hookers, feeding little nuggets in balls and sweet corn and luncheon meat in a real tight area, and look to fish really precise. I've plumbed up, I've got my far bank marker, I know exactly where I'm fishing. Really is a case now. We've waited a little bit later in the day to try and mimic an evening match, a shorter match. Hopefully there's been a few fish cruising around. Hopefully in the next hour or so they get their head down, and what I'm really looking to do is to target the fish on that rod, and if that goes well, then I'm going to keep an eye on my left hand line. I'm going to fish it today's session almost as if it was a match, and it's always good to look for little signs, especially in your margin line. What you don't want to be doing is wasting time having a look to see if there's fish there. Look for things like bubbles, swirls, tail patterns, anything like that that is a little bit of a giveaway. And quite often you can save a bit of time by not wasting time to see if the fish are there, but actually if you see any signs, like I've just said, swirls, bubbles, then you can go, and quite often you're straight into fish, and it's about not wasting any time. Like I say, the day's getting on a little bit. We've got plenty of hours of sunlight left, but I really want to get going. And what I'm going to do is kick off that rod line with 3/4 of a pot of mixed meat and corn and a little tiny ball of micros. And I'm also going to feed my edge line with about half a pot of micros, a little bit of corn, a little bit of meat, just sprinkled in a bit of an area. But like I say, be mindful of the fact that yes, you can feed that big area in the margin, but when you actually come to fish it and you're looking to target the fish, you want to feed in a little tiny area, put your float right on top and look for those real quick bites. You're going to eliminate a lot of line bites and false bites, and obviously then foul hook fish. But like I say, I've talked you through the methods that we're going to use today. I really wanted to show you this method because in my mind it really is something special, especially when you're looking to catch some fish quick. So I think it's time now to get a little bit of bait in and see if we can get some bites. Well, there we go, there's our first bite. A little bit earlier than I thought, to be fair. I just sat and waited, and a lightning fast bite on a real big bit of meat, one of those 8mm bits. Ooh, thought he'd come off then, but it's just pinging over his fin. You can hear the clutch working, and a good little tip when you're fishing like this is not to actually set your clutch until you hook your first fish. Then have a little bit of a play around, and you can get your clutch absolutely dead right then. And what you really want you just want it to, when you get that feeling that you're just pulling that little bit too hard, that's when you want your clutch to start to slip. You don't want it to be too loose, because again, one of the reasons we're fishing like this is to be able to get the fish in quick, to pull hard. And you can see now the bend in that rod. You can just pull that little bit harder. Not the biggest one in the lake, but again, a nice mirror to start. You can see just how quick that fish has been netted. And then all I'm going to do, see also there a couple of the stots have moved, and it's just a case of relocating them. And because I've got that mark on my pole now, very, very easy for me to feed. Basically, I've got the bit of tape exactly the same length as where my reel is, in line with my marker, which is the life buoy on the far bank, and in. And you can see just how quick and easy it is to fish like this. A lot of people back away from fishing a rod because they think, well, it's not as accurate as my pole, all my pole tips are the same length. But a little bit of time dedicated just to getting everything dead right, and you can really reap the rewards. As far as the actual fishing's concerned, fishing exactly the same as you would do a pole. So I'm just lowering the hook bait right on top of that fed area. A little bit of float showing. Again, we're fishing a big bait. We're looking for those real lightning fast bites. Could do with that wind keeping up a bit, because that's what will drive the fish down as well. But again, to catch that one relatively early in the afternoon is definitely a plus. Well, there we go, there's another one, slightly bigger fish. You can hear that clutch really working. I've got the back wind as well. Really is a fantastic way of catching these big fish, because no matter where they go, it can run 40, 50, 60 yards on its first run, and I can just follow it. As long as there's no snare, it's a nice big fish, that is. And I can follow it, and that's the reason that fishing like this on a rod can be so deadly, because yeah, you still lose some, but you get a massive percentage of these big fish in. And as you've seen, the first one we caught wasn't so big. This one on a great big lump of meat, well into double figures. And as I said earlier on the introduction, we're not fishing for hundreds of fish for a big weight today. You catch 20 fish, you could have close to 200 pound. And by fishing like this with big hooks, heavy line, you can virtually get every fish in that you hook. Nice big common. Again, the same as the pole. If he starts to go, you can imagine now if I was on a pole, you'd have a job getting your sections on in time for these big fish this time of year. Pole is still very, very good, but fishing like this with a rod, it just gives you that little bit of security. The fish goes left, the fish goes right, the fish goes out. You can just literally follow it. You can see I'm using both hands. That clutch is just slipping. And like I say, get that clutch right when you've hooked a fish. It's very hard to gauge it without a fish on. Yeah, nice big common. There we go. Come on. There you go. And they're the ones that we're talking about. Ones that barely get in your landing net. And they're the ones that are going to make a massive difference come the end of a match. Well, there we go. We've got a couple of fish in the net already. 2 fish for probably around about £25. And I just want to stop and just go over one other thing. Like I say, just because we're fishing a pole float on a rod doesn't mean anything's any different. Right down to marking your depth. You can see I plumbed up, found dead depth, and you can see there that I've got a little white mark on the rod just so that I can check my depth to. Obviously we're catching big fish. Any lost fish or fish running you through one of the bushes in close or some rushes can result in your depth moving. So just because you're fishing a rod, don't be afraid to mark your depth. Like I say, it just gives you something to relate to if you think something's not right or your float's moved. A little tiny dab of Tipp-Ex can just be scratched off afterwards, and it just makes fishing a lot easier during the match. So again, in line with my marker, I've just fed, dropped it in. I'm holding around about 8 inches of line. Another indication then straight away. Really looking for that real lightning fast bite. Only had 3 or 4 indications, but 2 of them have been those real quick bites which have resulted in a carp. One thing's for sure, when you get fish the size of that last one feeding, you're definitely going to see the positivity of the bites, how fast your float actually goes under. Just brings me on to another little tip that I use quite a lot, and that's actually watching for the speed of the bite. And by that I mean, because the float's very close to you, almost on top of your float, if the float goes under really quick and you can see it, it's gone and it's under lightning fast, and I strike. But when you get a lot of fish in your peg, it can be a good idea just to hesitate if you see your float go under really slow, as these can quite often be liners. And being on top of your float, because you're fishing so close to yourself, can be a major advantage when you're fishing for these big fish, as far as looking at the actual speed of the bite. There's one. You can hear the clutch working as well. I'm just going to fine tune that. It's always good when you hook your first fish to get the clutch working. And you can see the differences when you're fishing the rod is immediately I'm pulling the fish up, and you can see just how quick we netted that fish. Double figure fish in the net in literally a matter of seconds. And that's the difference when you're targeting trying to catch a big weight of fish quick. It might only be in the last hour, last 40 minutes of a 3-hour match. I'll try and pick this one up, although he's got a lot of fight left in him. By no means the biggest in the lake, but a fantastic fish to catch. I'd have said about £11. Absolutely fantastic. But you could see the reason why I use the rod now, the speed we got that in at, absolutely frightening. And you can really put a big weight in the net in a short time. Again, like I said at the start, I'm going to feed after every fish some meat, some corn, You can see the piece of tape there that's in exactly the same length as where my reel is. I can pop that down, just check my depth quickly, absolutely bang on. Any of the stots that have moved, just move them back into position. Using a big piece of meat, I can get this size 12 absolutely hidden in. You can see there against my arm, you can just see the actual spade of the hook. They're big fish and they're feeling confident, but they've seen it all before. And just by camouflaging your hook totally in that big bait can just result in tempting those real big fish. Again, that bite went under at 100 mile an hour. You knew that it was a big fish and you knew that it was in the mouth. Anything slow you want to try and really avoid striking at, because they can 99% of the time they can be liners and result in foul hook fish. I'm in line with my marker right where we fed. The trap's set. We're just waiting for another lightning fast bite, but you could see then the reason that a rod is so good. You can just get them in so quick, and when you're faced with the clock ticking down and all of a sudden you got some fish in your peg, if you can get them fish in quick and get back in and hook another one and get that in quick, that's when you're going to put a big weight in the net quick and go from sometimes nowhere in the match to winning. Again, unlike when I'm fishing for F1s, when I'm fishing for big carp I won't be moving my float at all. It's literally a case of getting the trap set and being really patient. I'm a massive fan of being patient, because these big fish, they come in your peg, they have a little look at the bait and then they go off again, they come back. And if you can just be patient, leave the trap set like I've said, and just wait and wait and wait, a lot of the time you're rewarded with that lightning fast bite. If you get a bit nervous, a little bit twitchy, you want to be in and out and checking the bait and lifting the float, quite often you can spook those big wary fish. I think a lot of the time those big fish will have 2 or 3 little looks at the pile of bait before they come in and actually feed on it. So just by being really patient can get you those extra bites, especially when we're talking about these real big fish. Well, we've had 2 or 3 fish, but last 10-15 minutes I've just had one indication. It's gone a little bit quiet, but I do fully expect some fish to come back. I'm going to give it another 2 or 3 minutes, and if I don't get an indication I'm going to feed again, because most of the bites have come just after feeding. Just gives me a few minutes to talk to you about the striking quite hard. Obviously got a big bit of meat on, reasonable size hook as well, and trying to pull that hook through the meat and set the hook if it is a proper bite. Obviously then your meat is going to come off, but because we're fishing at such close range, it's literally a matter of seconds and you can rebait and be straight back in. So don't be afraid when you're fishing like this to really strike quite hard. You're looking to pull that big hook through that lump of meat and into the fish's mouth. A lot of people just lift and drop, and with the pole that's fine, but when you're fishing these big bits of meat you really do need to pull that hook through that meat and into the fish's mouth. The fish that we've caught, the bites have been lightning fast. I've missed 2 or 3 bites that have gone under the seine, but again, you know, we're fishing for big wary fish that have been there, seen it, done it, and quite often you can get bites that are definite bites but you don't hit because the fish have ejected the bait unbelievably quick. I think it's just testimony to, you know, the fish really being streetwise and knowing exactly what's going on. But then again, you know, we've caught some nice sized fish. We caught one that's probably 16 pound plus. That was hooked right flush in the top lip. Float went under 100 mile an hour and bang, it was on. But like I say, the day's getting on and I'm really convinced that the fishing will just get better and better and better from now on.
So big, aren't they? Imagine looking this on the pole, you'd just be playing it for an hour. The fish have really turned up in numbers, some real big fish, and the last two fish I know have been caught well on camera, and I think it's two brilliant sort of examples of why the rod is so good. The first one, float's gone under 100 miles an hour, bang, hooked the fish literally within a matter of seconds, 12-13 pound in the net, and that's the amount of pressure that you can apply immediately with the rod. And like I say, when you're looking to catch a big weight quick, it really is a must. Still be playing it now probably on the pole. Dropped it back in next chuck, and I've foul hooked one that's probably 16-17 pound, just outside the mouth, just by its small fin. Managed to hang on to it and net it probably after about a 2-minute fight. And I'm sure even with very, very strong elastic, big hook on the pole, you'd still be playing it. Bearing in mind the method that I've showed you today are for those short matches when you really need to pull trees up. I think it's the last two fish that I've caught have been two absolutely perfect examples of why I think this is such a deadly method. You probably noticed that I've changed my feeding. I've started throwing the bait now. There's a lot more fish in the area and they definitely seem to be coming to noise. I noticed that when I was potting in, I'd be getting one bite immediately after potting in, and then I'd be sitting there quite a long time without any indications. And by throwing it, not only am I making noise, but I can obviously, there's another one there, you can probably see, I'll try and get an example of how quick you can potentially get some of these fish in, although he's woken up again. I literally hooked him, not pulling ridiculously hard, but it's the constant pressure from the strike that these fish don't like. And you can see we're not even a minute into the fight and the fish was almost netted then. But it's the constant pressure. It's not the fact that I'm pulling ridiculously hard. It's the fact that from word go,
I've been pulling the same constant pressure. There you go, it's not the biggest one in the lake, but again, that's netted, quick, and you can see it's always a judge how quick you got the fish in by how much it fights still in the net, and it's a case of just getting the fish under control, hook out, down, reposition the shot, piece of meat on, and I'm back in. You can see there, just through that little demo, just why I wanted to show you this method today. Everything else, the rig, the plumbing up, the feeding, everything's pretty much standard, the same as the pole. A few little tweaks with the shot, with the stot, sorry, instead of the shot. The line through the body float, which again just gives you that extra durability, reliability. Obviously the heavy main line, slightly longer rod, all little things that will help you put this method into real good use. And you can see why sometimes when you get it right with the right gear, 10-12 fish in an hour is easily achievable. Definitely seem to be coming to a little bit of noise. There's a bite there then. Lightning fast bite, but like I said earlier, a lot of these fish are very streetwise. They know exactly what's going on. They've been caught time and time again. So you are going to miss some bites still. The difference is with this, when you do attach to a fish and it's hooked properly, the fish can be in the net and you can be back out fishing again in a matter of minutes. And that's what we're looking to achieve. To go, like I said earlier, to go from nowhere in the match to first. This is one of those methods that can do that for you. You start fishing a pole with lighter elastics, smaller hooks and that, fair enough, you're still going to hook the fish. Are you going to get them in that quick? 100% not. You might notice I'm getting an odd little indication. I'm really trying to hesitate and wait for that real lightning fast bite. Anything quick, whether you're on a float or a feeder, anything quick is definitely going to be a proper bite. Anything slow is more than likely going to be a liner. And that's what I'm really looking to distinguish the difference between. That's foul hooked. See, that's only the second one foul hooked. But again, not the biggest fish in the lake, but deposited into the net all the same. Don't like to foul hook fish, never intentionally try, but if you can land a fish that's foul hooked, it's obviously a bonus. But going back to the bites, I'm really trying to wait for those real lightning fast bites. You will still foul hook some fish like that last one. Shot under 100 mile an hour, but it was foul hooked. I think actually what happened on that last one was I missed the bite because the float shot under, I missed it and then came up about 2 foot and hooked that fish. So there's obviously quite a few fish about when they decide to come in. Definitely throwing that bait's help, but just try and be really picky on the bites that you pick up on. See that lightning fast little indication then, but I struck purely because of the speed of the indication. And that's what I'm looking for. You notice even on the feeder, you know, you get a real quick pull. It's normally a fish hooked in the mouth. Anything slow's normally a line bite, and it's the same. Bit of a lift bite then, but it could have well have been a skimmer or a small fish. Don't think it was a carp. But I think the last 20 minutes has really shown just how good this method can be, and just how quick you can put 50, 60, 80 pound in the net. Absolutely frightening. Well, here we are coming towards the end of the session, and I think it's been a fantastic day. Even though it's been hot, the fish have really played ball on the close line. We caught some really big fish, and I think it's been a perfect exercise to show you just how effective this method can be. Obviously, just to go over the finer points, the reason that I like to use it is purely because you can get the fish in so quick. You can also land those odd foul hook fish. But the main thing is, in those short sprint matches, is that you can put a big weight in the net, even in the last half hour, 50 minutes to an hour. You've seen today that I've caught fish in excess of 10 pound and landed them in under a minute. Always remember, because you're fishing for big fish, you're fishing for a big weight, really bump that main line up. Don't be afraid to use a strong, durable main line like Dara ST. Big hooks, big baits, and really look at those bites and indications. Strike at those real fast indications. And because you're fishing close in and you're almost on top of your float, you can really watch the float and really look for the speed of the movement. Anything really fast is worth striking at. Anything slow, tend to leave, because you don't want to be foul hooking these big fish if you can get away with it. As far as the feeding's concerned, obviously I've swapped from cupping all the bait to throwing it. When I started throwing it, the catch rate really did go through the roof. I've run out of bait now, but we're at the end of the session. That little bit of noise definitely drew those carp in. It sort of coincided, another bite there then, it sort of coincided with the day just cooling down a little bit, the wind getting up, and I think it all hand in hand contributed to the fish really having a bit of a go on that short line. It never stops to amaze me fishing, and it's nice for me to go out on a day like today and just underline it. And I have to say that, you know, when you need to catch a weight of fish quick in a short match or at the end of a match, this has got to be the #1 way of doing it. Fishing close, fishing really heavy, big hooks, fishing a rod, you can really get those big fish in quick. And like I say, when we have a look at the fish afterwards, I think you have to agree that even though we've not caught till late, we've caught one hell of a weight, and it does really underline why this method is right up there in my armoury when we talk about catching big weights quick on commercials. Well, there you go, there's just a small selection of the ones we caught today. Probably had in excess of 200 pound. Just goes to show how deadly, even though it's quite an old method, but fishing that rod, fishing a pole float on the rod very accurately, just how deadly it can be. Venues like Gold Valley, certain other commercials through the country where there's big fish that will come close. In those short evening matches, it really is unbeatable. We've got some fish in today. You can see there's 2 or 3 there, well over 10 pound, and they've been netted literally in a matter of seconds. And that's what you've got to do if you want to compete with the top anglers in these short matches. You've got to be aggressive, you've got to fish heavy, and you've got to get them in quick. It's been a fantastic day. I'm going to get them back now. As a lot of you know, that I do one-to-one tuition, not just here at Gold Valley, but on a multitude of venues. So if you fancy a day out, just to fine-tune any kind of tactics, whether it's commercial fishing, fishing for bream, even fishing rivers. A lot of people have been out on days with me, and they've all said that they've got a lot out of it. Not just with commercial fishing, like I've said, but a multitude of different types of fishing, different tactics and different venues. To arrange a session, you'll find the contact details below.